Tiki, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Maggie. Moose, you as well.
Tiki.
It's great to talk with you. Unfortunately, we can't be talking about better things when it comes to the New York Giants. Let's start here. John Mara got a big dose of the boo birds on Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was expecting it to be that loud and reverberate that long. You know John Mara much, much better than Moose and I do. How do you think he took that on Sunday?
I think he understands it. Obviously, it's a production-based business. It's a meritocracy in a sense. You get what you earn, and if you're not earning it, then you're gonna get the boo birds. And I think interestingly, we've all been there. I mean, as good as my career was at times when I had the fumbling issues, I got booed. It is what it is. You kind of accept it and you realize that you got to be better. And I think knowing John and the Mara family and really just the Giant organization as well as I do, they know that they need to be better. And I think it's clear. And until that happens, I think fans kind of have the right to give him what he got this past weekend. It's sad in a sense because the Giants are such a storied franchise in my mind and in I think the mind of a lot of fans. But over the last few years, the product has not been good and it's unacceptable.
Tiki, you look at the Giants right now. Do you look at this as being hopeless?
No, definitely not hopeless. I think there's a process to developing a winning culture and a winning mindset and being that team and those individuals on that team that make plays to win in crunch time. I think we tend to, as fans, and most fans parachute in as opposed to digging in. With a fan who parachutes in, you look at the result and you look at the outcome, and then you say, well, they suck. When the reality is, against the Washington football team on last Thursday night, the Giants actually played pretty good. They made mistakes at the end, and if Dexter Lawrence doesn't jump off sides, we're saying that's a great character win for the New York Giants as opposed to a devastating character loss for the New York Giants. The same thing happened this past weekend against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, they could have scored more points and put the game away when they had the opportunity. The defense held its own until about 4 minutes left where they gave up 10 points in 4 minutes, and we look at it and we say, well, man, they just suck. When the reality is they played 4 bad minutes of football on the defensive side of the ball. And so context matters. And so I don't think they're a bad team. They just don't know how to win yet.
Tiki, I totally understand where you're coming from. But if I were going to answer that as a fan, I would say, but the Washington football team defense might be really overrated. And They had a backup quarterback. And the Atlanta Falcons had just allowed 2 other teams, granted one was the Bucs, but 2 other teams to hang 80 points on them, and you could only muster 14. The devil's advocate side of that is the Giants shouldn't have to come down to a play or two. Aren't we at the point where all these top picks, doesn't it have to pan out at some point?
Of course it needs to pan out. And that's been probably the biggest issue is the development of the top picks. I mean, what was the stat you said last week of all the first rounders that the Giants have signed over the last half a decade or so, even more? No, they don't re-sign them and they don't end up panning out. And of course that's a knock on Dave Gettleman and the job of crafting this roster. But this is still only a year and 3 games into Joe Judge's tenure. And I know I'm starting to see these things on social media and other, memeable sites that, worst coaches in the NFL. Joe Judge is right up there with him. And I think that's unfair because I don't believe that he's one of the worst coaches in the National Football League. I get frustrated by, and I think fans will hear what I'm saying. You get frustrated by the opportunities that get wasted in each and every game that they've lost. And they're 0-3 again. I don't think they'll go 0-4, but who knows? They're against the Saints who haven't scored. I mean, they haven't put up over 150 yards of offense a couple of times this year already. They play great defense, but offensively they leave a lot to be desired.
Yep.
They'll hang around, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, can you find ways to win football games? And that's a lot on coaching, but it's also on the character of some of the players on the team.
How ugly do you think this year gets, Tiki?
I don't think it gets as ugly as people are assuming it's going to be. I mean, the Giants aren't playing bad football. They have bad moments. The Jets are playing bad football, right? And it's throughout the entirety of the game. And I feel for Zach Wilson because I really like the kid and I think he has a chance, but he's running for his life and now his mechanics are all screwed up and he has no idea what he's seeing on each and every play. And he's getting desperate. And you can't be desperate in the NFL, especially as a quarterback. You have to be in control. You have to understand what's happening to you or what a team is trying to do to you. And that's the only way you're going to get out of it. Interestingly, I'm actually seeing that with Daniel Jones. And so while people will say, well, Daniel Jones isn't the answer. I did an event up in Binghamton on Monday. And
Hey,
I had people raise their hand. Binghamton Sports Hall of Fame. I was up there on Monday night. It was a great event. We had a good time. It lasted until the night.
Nice.
all the way till 9:30.
Yeah, no, actually it was like 10:30. I was like, what's going on here, man?
10:30 in Binghamton on a
should be-
Monday.
you guys
Nothing
should be
good
in
happens
bed.
after 10:30 on a Monday.
He's like, I got a thing.
Yeah, right. I gotta
Gotta
go
roll.
to bed. It's 10:30. I gotta go to sleep. But my point is, I asked the room. I was like, who thinks Daniel Jones is the answer here? There's like 8 hands. You know what I mean? And so I said, Daniel Jones is not the problem.
Jones can play, Tiki. Jones
he can play, and I think we're seeing that. And he hasn't thrown an interception this year. He's had the one turnover early, but he's actually been really good, and that's encouraging. And he feels like he's in control. It's just everything else around him needs to get better and more consistent. We can't have all of these injuries from Evan Ingram with his calf and Sterling Shepard limps into the locker room holding his hamstring, and it's just like you just want to face plant yourself, right? Because it feels like every time something starts to work in the positive for the Giants, something else comes and undercuts them. And that's what's most frustrating because they're not playing bad like the Jets. They're just not winning.
Tiki Barber is our guest. Okay, so after the game on Sunday, Saquon Barkley said something like, once we start believing in each other as players and once we start believing in the scheme, that's when we're going to start winning. And that threw kind of a red flag up to me. I'm like, why would you not believe in the scheme? What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I mean, it's new for a lot of these guys, right? Jason Garrett's only in his second year and 4 games into his second year, and you gotta buy in. I used to tell you guys this, and I think I told you this last year. Kerry Collins used to always be the kind of a leader quarterback who would say, look, if we're all wrong, we're all right, right? So you gotta be all on the same page. He was alluding to checking, like we get at the line of scrimmage when we have to check to a different play. And sometimes I'd be like, Kerry, that's the wrong play. And he would say, well, if we're all wrong, we're all right. But the idea is that if you're all buying in to one way of doing things, then it's much easier to understand each other and find ways to be successful. And I think that's what Saquon's alluding to. I don't think he's necessarily saying, yeah, we don't trust what Jason Garrett's calling.
Well, that's kind of what it seemed like. Could it be taken that way?
Feels like.
Right.
It's what it feels like. And I think that comes from frustration, especially for Saquon, who has one, positive big play run a game, and then the rest is sub mediocre. I mean, I can't even say it's mediocre. It's just bad. It's like 1.2 yards per carry on every other play. He bust one for 41 2 weeks ago. He bust one for 15. Everything else is half a yard in a cloud of dust. And so that comes from frustration. But that frustration is baked there because of injuries and inconsistencies and still developing young players on that offensive line. It's a luxury to have everything set in front of you. The Giants don't have that right now.
Tiki, I'm looking at over to the Jets and Saleh. The inexperience on that staff.
Yeah.
And what you've seen here through the first 3 weeks, Saleh coming out saying he believes that LaFleur's offensive coordinator has done a nice job. We've already talked about Wilson getting knocked around, and he's getting beaten up every single week. If Saleh is going to be kind of that head coach, to be that difference maker, right, kind of cultural changer of a head coach, how long do you think he starts to show it? Because the first 3 weeks here, you look at this team, the way they've played, the lack of preparedness at times, the game plans going in. A little concerned here about Saleh, first-time head coach.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be, but you got to realize that just like, say, Zach Wilson, who's coming from BYU, it's not a small university, but a smaller program, into the New York Jets in the NFL, there's a learning curve. The same thing can be said for Coach Saleh, and he's been around the game for a long time, and he's been an assistant. He's carried every role from quality control a coach to defensive coordinator, and so he knows the game. But the pressure of having to make those decisions and build that culture, it takes time to learn it. And look, I'm not judging the New York Jets on wins and losses this year. You just can't. What you have to judge them on is how do they play and do they quit, right? For instance, our buddy, we talked about him last week, Dan Campbell, and I'll always bring him up because I think he's an unbelievable man, but he's also a great coach, and you're seeing it because the Lions, who have for like years, maybe generations, sucked as a team, they fight. Right? They play to the very end of every game. And if it's not for a non-call delay a game, they beat the Baltimore Ravens, right? I mean, nobody could have called that, right? And so you see it in the culture that Dan is building, that these guys are playing hard all the way to the end of games. And for the Jets, that's what I need to see. I don't care if you win games right now, because you know that the East, the AFC East is the Buffalo Bills, and probably just the Buffalo Bills right now because neither the Patriots or the Dolphins are playing great football. But to me, for the Jets and for Coach Saleh, it's all about finding a process that works, getting the players to buy into that, and then getting them to fight. Right. And yeah, the play calling has been, questionable. I really like Mike LaFleur as a person. I think he's got great ideas, but doing it in real time is very different than conceptualizing it. And I think that's the issue that's starting to, be troubling to translate on Sundays.
Tiki, back to the Giants. They go down to New Orleans. It's going to be tough. It's going to be an emotional crowd. I mean, it's so loud there.
Yep.
Trying to play in that environment is super hostile. What does it have to look like for the Giants to possibly pull out this game? Is that asking too much?
Yeah, well, they have to score when they get the opportunities, and the Giants haven't done well in that in the red zone this year. But because the Saints aren't a team that's going to run away from you right now. They are fantastic on defense. They're top 5, I think, overall defense. They're the number 1 teams in takeaway at +5 on the season so far. So if you give them opportunities, so if you're reckless with the football, or Daniel Jones, who hasn't thrown an interception, throws interceptions, that's when the Saints can get away from you. But if you play them smart and you play them, close to the vest, so to speak, as the Giants have the last couple of weeks against Washington and Atlanta, then you put yourself in a position to beat that team, even though they're a heavy favorite. I think they're +8 in this game, or actually they're laying 8, so they're -8 in this game. I think the Giants, the way that they win this game is by getting opportunities and scoring, and then just doing enough to frustrate Jameis Winston, to make him do Jameis Winston type things, which we've seen, some to success, some to failure for him this year.
Hey, Tiki, we appreciate it. Where are you at this weekend?
The Greater Binghamton Sports Hall of Fame.
No, but I'm going close that way.
You're going to Buffalo this weekend.
Unfortunately, Binghamton and Buffalo aren't close. That's what makes this so difficult.
That's a good point. It's like 190-something more miles right away. Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills. I'll be up there this weekend.
There you go. Well, enjoy the Bills route, all right?
Exactly.
Bills owe them one after what happened in the playoffs a couple of years ago.
Yeah, right.
Take
care, guys.
Thank
We'll
you,
guys
Tiki.
next week.
Thank you, Tiki. Well. Giants, I think a gentleman that does Talking Giants, the great Bobby Skinner, tweeted out first, and give him credit, that the Giants have signed Isaiah Wilson.